Good evening. And it's actually evening when I'm shooting this for once, so I'm not misspeaking when I say that. Welcome everyone to my final Edgic video of the season. Basically, we're less than 24, well, about 24 hours away, give or take, from finding out whether or not my fat ass was right. It's been an interesting few weeks since I last presented my thoughts on where the contestants were, but I'm holding pat because if I'm going to have to admit that I was wrong, I might as well wait to the last minute. With that, let's get to discussing this past episode and what I think it means and where I think we're heading tomorrow night. We start off with Joe. Basically, he was over the top in his positivity, despite his personality never really being over the top. Went middle of the road, double positive tone. Let's put it this way. We didn't see much of Joe this season. I have his overall Edgic rating as under the radar positive. And the only reason he's positive on it is because of how big of a positive push I feel he got this week. Getting it done at 71 is going to become a hashtag. We were pretty much point blank told by Jeff Probst that we should be inspired by the guy. And sure, a cynic like me wonders, wouldn't he have been more inspiring if we had actually seen him in the merge? Save for the last two episodes where he did a Bruce impersonation after doing a Butch impersonation. Probably so, but then again, we might have also been really angry if he was someone we cared about and then he lost up to that point. It was nice for him to get some sort of edit on the way out. And it was also nice to be right about the fact that, shock of all shocks, he was still medevac material, even at this very late stage. And it pretty much establishes Joe as a nice old man, and also possibly a reason that Aubrey doesn't win, which we'll get to in a bit. Sucky way to go out, but at least we noticed Joe. Huzzah. Number 4, I have Ty, who was very emotional again this round, but at the same time, I would say that we did see enough of his thought process, of his battle between going with his head versus his heart, that he was complex again this week, and by a smidge, still the most visible player in the episode. I will say this, I feel like the last two episodes have pretty clearly delineated Ty as a beloved character to us. We're supposed to love him, but at the same time, not a beloved character amongst the people playing the game. I think they like him. There is no chance he wins. There is no chance he wins. He has pissed off a lot of people. He is not very good at communicating. It doesn't seem, based on how horrible his tribal last episode was before this episode, and, good news is he didn't get to screw up tribal this week because he didn't get the tribal council. He's had a lot of flubs at tribal council. It's just, he's not our winner. He's not our winner. He's a big character. He will absolutely be back, and I like him on the whole, and, the edit supports that, but he is not our winner. I do think there's an outside chance he could get to the end, although I'm still pretty sure with it being a final 2 in all likelihood that he goes in 4th and then the girls turn on Aubrey. Not to spoil where I'm heading here, but, Ty's basically, Mark is a chicken and Ty's a goat. That's where we are, and he's a beloved goat, one that we'll see back again, but, and that's if he gets to the end. Which I don't think he does at this point. That being said, he arguably wasn't the biggest loser this week in terms of prowess, because if Joe had stayed, I'm pretty sure that Aubrey would have been our winner. Aubrey is our number 3, at CP3. Right outside contendership. Arguably, I should put her ahead of Sydney because I'm pretty sure if Aubrey does get to the end, she does win. Whereas I'm pretty much certain that Sydney does get to the end and don't think she wins. So, I don't know, one's mileage may vary, but given that I think it's an almost impossibility that Aubrey is actually in the finals, and I'm almost certain that Sydney is in the finals, I give Sydney the edge over Aubrey. Well, Aubrey, I thought, was more middle of the road last round. She immediately explained the complexity of her last round in the beginning of this episode about how it was a big move to leave Ty out of control for a vote and to retake control of her for herself by blindsiding Jason. Well, not blindsiding Jason per se, but blindsiding Ty with the Jason vote. That she needed to be shown to the jury to be retaking the control. So it's clear that she's thinking about that, and that alone is the price of admission for complexity, I would say, this season. She was reasoned throughout the episode and realized that Ty might not come back to her, and that could be a problem, and then realized, finally, somebody realized that Ty is not a jury threat whatsoever, and that she could easily beat him. And did a really bang-up job of working Ty's emotions after Ty spent all of the episode saying, oh, should I really go with Aubrey? I feel very betrayed by her. She did exactly what she needed to do to tug on that man's heartstrings and get him lock, stock, and barrel. And if Joe doesn't eat all of the red meat, she has those 3 votes and takes out Michelle, and probably gets to the end and probably wins in a landslide. Joe leaving here and Neil leaving at the merge, it's another example of how she's had to overcome adversity and, how she, never thought she could have made it here and why she is Cirie. And much like Cirie, I'm pretty sure she's going to get to the final 3 and then realize it's not a final 3 final tribal council and be our last juror, upsetting, I'm sure, lots of people, most notably Stephen Lehman, who will weep and weep and weep. Great strategist, tons of respect for Aubrey, but not our winner. Sydney, CP2, is my number 2 for the week. Again, pretty much the quiet voice of reason, her sitting back, talking about how Mr. Joe probably shouldn't eat all of the red meat. All that beef, not doing it. Keeping all of her options open, of course, realizing that she needs to think about keeping, Michelle as a backup option, which ended up being rather salient considering the fact that Aubrey ponders getting rid of Sydney and keeping time almost immediately thereafter. It's really impressive just how perceptive Sydney is. Like, she always seems to be quietly sitting in the corner watching something shady happen and knowing that she has to go to work. In this particular case, Ty and Aubrey having their powwow and her just sitting here watching this and being like, yeah, that's not a talk that non-allies have with each other. Then she goes, gets right to work on Michelle, and understands the importance of keeping it on the down low, her strategy with Michelle, so that people don't target her first for it. Ultimately, I think the problem that Sydney is going to have with the jury is that some of them are going to be bitter at her. I don't think if she ends up in the finals with anybody besides Ty that she gets Jason and Scott's vote. And I don't think she's made, she's never been shown to make, even if she has made, the personal connections that Michelle talks about making. And to that end, I feel like Michelle had another big episode, and despite her back being against the wall, and despite the fact that she needed Joe medevac in order to probably stay, basically she had another big episode. She showcased her ability in the game. She noted Aubrey's pecking order, and she immediately got to work on upsetting it, pointing out to Ty that it's really a great time to talk about the game when literally no one else is going to be there for 24 hours. Do you want to talk now? Mind-blowing concept. She basically spends that time teaching Ty how Survivor works, and it's great. It's great in that it was entertaining television. You know, you got the joke about the Thai massage, so on and so forth. But it showed why Michelle has the emotional intelligence to win this game. She understood that her and Ty don't have the deepest connection, and she's cool with it. She's not angry about it. She's not lashing out at Ty about it. She's just being friendly with him and making him think about things. And, you know, it probably wouldn't have worked out for her if not for the medevac, but, you know, the medevac happened. She's still there. It's the final four, and it's an individual game now, which we know Ty realizes from the preview. I also think, maybe this is a cheap reasoning, but she pretty much had the same quote this episode that she had 2 episodes ago about how everything needs to be with a purpose at this point, and I'm pretty sure they either took that from this episode, her telling that to Sydney, and threw it into the Julia boot to make her look more impressive, or vice versa. Either way, they're trying to reiterate all of that, and I feel like that's them pushing to explain why Michelle wins, which tells me that I'm right and Michelle should win. So that's what I'm sticking with. And we'll know in about 24 hours whether I was right, whether I wasn't. Hope everybody watches the podcast. Should be a great end of season discussion. I'm sure Colin has a lot of great things planned. And until then, you know, feel free to comment or critique my thoughts. And most importantly, have yourselves a good evening.